The big story in the United States today is that the Iran war is now colliding with American politics, the economy, and even military planning. First, the Trump administration is considering whether to send thousands more US troops to the Middle East as the war enters its third week. According to the reporting, those reinforcements could give President Trump more options, from helping secure tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz to possibly supporting missions on Iran's shoreline or even Karg Island, the hub for most of Iran's oil exports. Officials have also discussed ways to secure Iran's stocks of highly enriched uranium, but no decision has been made yet on sending ground troops, and even limited boots on the ground would carry major political risk for Trump, who campaigned on avoiding new Middle East wars. That debate is happening alongside a broader tug-of-war inside the White House. Some of Trump's advisors are warning that rising gasoline prices and oil shocks could badly hurt him politically, especially with weak public support for the war and midterm elections ahead. Others are pushing him to keep up the pressure on Iran. At the same time, figures from Trump's populist base are warning against getting dragged into another open-ended conflict. That helps explain why Trump's public message has been so mixed, saying at times that the US has already won, and at other times that it still has to finish the job. The war is also exposing cracks inside Trump's own national security team. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, told lawmakers that US intelligence assessed Iran was not rebuilding its nuclear enrichment capability after the strikes last year. That directly undercuts one of Trump's key arguments for going to war now.
The intelligence community assessed that Iran maintained the intention to rebuild and to continue to grow their nuclear enrichment capability.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you present to Congress national intelligence, timely, objective, and independent of political considerations. You've stated today that the intelligence community's assessment is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated and that, quote, there had been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. Was it the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president based on a volume of information that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine what constitutes a threat to the United States. This is the worldwide threats hearing.
Gabbard said the 2025 strikes had obliterated Iran's enrichment program and that there had been no efforts since then to rebuild it. Even so, she also said Iran's regime remains intact, though heavily degraded, and still has the ability to attack US and allied interests.
Prior to Operation Epic Fury, the IC assesses Iran was trying to recover from the severe damage to its nuclear infrastructure sustained during the 12-day war, and continued to refuse to comply with its nuclear obligations with the IAEA, refusing them access to key facilities. The IC assesses that China, Russia, and North Korea see the United States as a strategic competitor and potential adversary. Iran has long viewed the US as an adversary and is engaged in active conflict with the US as of today. The IC assesses that Operation Epic Fury is advancing fundamental change in the region that began with Hamas's attack on Israel on October 7th, 2023, and continued with the 12-day war last year, resulting in weakening Iran and its proxies. The IC assesses the regime in Iran appears to be intact but largely degraded due to attacks on its leadership and military capabilities. Its conventional military power projection capabilities have largely been destroyed, leaving limited options. Iran's strategic position has been significantly degraded.
And I appreciated Dr. Gabbard, your comments yesterday about agreeing that the president has sole authority, I guess, in his bones to declare whether something is an imminent threat. I didn't agree with your friend, Mr. Kent, but I agreed with him yesterday on the fact that there was no imminent threat. I guess what I'm concerned about, one thing is, even in your printed testimony today on page 6, And your last paragraph on page 6, as a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated. There's been no efforts to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. You omitted that paragraph from your oral opening. Was that because the president had said there was an imminent threat 2 weeks?
No, sir. I recognize that the time was running long, and I skipped through some of the portions.
So you chose to take
my oral delivered remarks.
You chose to omit the parts that contradict the president. The president continues to say as well that he had no idea, was shocked that the Iranians had moved to take over the Strait of Hormuz. Did you provide any intelligence that would say that it would be that it was not likely that the Iranians would try to move on the strait?
I'm not aware of those remarks, and I think those of us here at the table can point to the fact that historically the Iranians have always threatened to leverage their control over
why would the president say he was amazed?
I'm not aware of those remarks.
What about the comments the president made that thought that he was surprised again, reports that Iran struck the adjacent Gulf states?
Again, I'm not aware of those remarks. We have
well, let me ask you this. Did you brief the president? Did you brief the president?
Decisions.
Did you brief the president if he starts a war of choice that the likely result would be that Iran would strike adjacent Gulf nations and close the Strait of Hormuz? Did you brief him on those two facts that I think have been consistently the assumptions of the intelligence community?
I have not and won't divulge internal conversations. I will say that those of us within the intelligence community continue to provide the president with all of the best objective intelligence available to inform his decisions.
Her testimony came just after Joe Kent, the director of the National Counterterrorism Center, resigned in protest, saying Iran posed no imminent threat and that the war betrayed Trump's own America First promises. Economically, the fallout is already showing up in the numbers. The Federal Reserve kept interest rates unchanged at 3.50 to 3.75%, saying the outlook has become more uncertain because of the war and the surge in oil prices. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said rising energy costs could add more inflation pressure in the months ahead. Producer prices also jumped by the most in 7 months in February, with energy, transport, and services all pushing inflation higher. Markets reacted badly, with stocks falling while oil rose again. To try to contain that pressure, the administration has announced a 60-day waiver of the Jones Act, temporarily allowing foreign-flagged ships to move fuel, fertilizer, and other goods between U.S. ports. The White House says the move is designed to ease short-term supply disruptions and help stabilize fuel costs. But analysts say it is unlikely to make a dramatic difference at the pump. At best, it may slightly reduce logistical friction, while the real driver of prices remains the war itself and the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. Shipping and fertilizer costs are already rising, and even though farm and refining groups welcome the added flexibility, maritime labor groups say the waiver could hurt U.S. workers without meaningfully lowering prices. And finally, in a separate culture war development, the Trump administration says it will display a statue of Caesar Rodney in Washington this year as part of the 250th anniversary of the United States. Rodney signed the Declaration of Independence, but he was also an enslaver. His statue was removed in Delaware in 2020 during racial justice protests. The administration says putting it back on display is part of acknowledging the full breadth of American history, while critics see it as part of Trump's broader push against what he calls anti-American ideology.